the Azure Cloud was still the biggest growing sector of all the Microsoft business portfolio, just like it was in the third quarter of 2021. So, do you see this changing at all this year in 2022?
I don't think so. It's going to change. If you look at the evolution of Satya Nadella since he became the CEO, his focus has been the cloud.
Hi guys, Kazeem here. You're welcome back to my channel. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so you can get notification on my latest post. On today's episode of the Tech Talk, we're going to be talking Microsoft Azure Cloud trend for 2021 and 2022. And I'm going to be spending some time today with Abdul Kazi. Abdul Kazi is a cloud architect based in Canada, and hopefully Abdul Kazi is going to be able to help us do justice to today's topic. So let's get straight into the interview. All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Tech Talk with me, Kazeem. Today, I have Abdul Kazi with me, and today on the show, we're going to be discussing Azure Cloud trends in 2021 and 2022. Hi, Abdul, and welcome to the Tech Talk Show.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
For the people who don't know who you are, right? So, can we start with a little of who you are and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, my name is Abdul Kazi. I've been in the IT industry for almost 20 years, um, and I'm heavily invested in the Azure space, very active in the Azure community. I'm a MTC, Microsoft Certified Trainer. Uh, I have Azure Architect certification and been playing with Azure for almost 7, 8 years now. And I work for a Microsoft partner in the enterprise space.
So let's jump right in, Abdul. Let's begin with your takeaway of 2021. You know, we're supposed to have this last year, December, but we couldn't,
Yes,
right?
correct.
Yeah. So the focus is going to be more on 2022. But let's begin with the wrap up of 2021. So, what would you say are your top three cloud trends of 2021?
So, it's interesting. I'm seeing the same trend in 20, or saw the same trend in 2021, and then it's probably going to be the same one in 2022. So the biggest one we've seen is the multi-cloud become mainstream. As you know, most of the companies now at least have one workload in Azure or in public cloud, if you will, like AWS, GCP, what have you, because they really wanted to get an experience or know-how of how the public cloud works. Because there's a lot of speculation from companies moving into the cloud. How's that my data going to be? How's security going to be? So I think that phase has passed. People are really comfortable moving into the cloud. Now they're thinking about, okay, I'm already in one public cloud. How do I make sure that from redundancy aspect or DR aspect, I have multiple clouds? So especially given in December, AWS had multiple outages. I believe there were 3 outages. So a lot of people are thinking, okay, if I'm invested in AWS, that goes down. Although one region went down, so you can obviously make sure that you're in other regions. But people are looking, and even the enterprise customers are looking from a multi-cloud strategy because they already have, invested in multiple clouds. The other thing is it also depends on the workload as well. So, for example, people might be investing in virtual desktop for Azure, but for ML, they might go to Google. So it really depends also on the workload they're going to do. So that, it's really a unique business case, what the use case is and what you want to do. So that's one. The second one, I think, and I've seen the trend in 2021 and 2022 is going to be the AI in cloud computing. So just to give you a sense of what AI is, so artificial intelligence is really, the activities that is performed by machines rather than humans. And the perfect example I can give you is I'm sure you've seen Jeopardy with the famous host Alex Trebek, which is no longer there. Uh, on Jeopardy, there was one of the episodes they had the IBM Watson. So IBM Watson is really an AI, right? So that's more of a artificial intelligence. But think about AI in the cloud. That's going to be huge because AI by itself right now is fairly costly, right? Because you need a high amount of compute power. You need a lot of talent from that aspect. So it's gaining traction, and AI in the cloud. What I see happening is going to be a service. So AI as a service, just like we have SaaS, software as a service. That's going to be huge. A lot of companies are going to be basically, making a turnkey solution for AI and doing it out there. Because the big thing, if you notice, in the past couple of years, we have generated more data than we've done in the history. So we already have the data. Now AI is starting to take the data, you know, manage the data, and then from that, it's going to figure out, okay, what are the best things to do from that. So that's my second prediction. The third one, and this might be too obvious, is virtual desktop. So due to the pandemic, what I've seen is people really moving into the virtual desktop bandwagon because especially people who are in the regulated industry, so financial, military, government, what have you, they had to physically send physical laptops to employees or contractors, which is quite cost prohibitive. So what we've seen is a lot of employees, they're saying, have virtual desktops. That is going to be great because it's secure. You can manage the virtual desktop. And the good thing is it's scalable. So think about it. If you have a physical machine, laptop, desktop, if you want to scale it, it's not going to be scalable, right? Like, for example, if the use case is for using CAD, the drawing software for architecture, as we know, CAD really needs high compute power, right? So if you're spinning up a virtual machine, you can accordingly spin that up and then bring it back down. So you're not heavily invested in that cost. So the cost is going to be, adjustable. Whereas if you're doing it physically, you have to buy that physical equipment. You've done it, and then that becomes a sunk cost for you. So I already see this another trend. And one more trend actually I will share. And this was interesting, especially given that Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard yesterday. Cloud computing. I think that is going to be huge for 2022 and moving forward, because gaming on demand is going to be big. Obviously, it is already big. It's gaining traction, and also it's going to help Microsoft and other companies from piracy as well. So I think that's what we've seen. So it's really a trend. It's going to be much more bigger trend for 2021. So those are my kind of 3-4 takes on the trend for 2022.
Your first trend, you mentioned multi-cloud, right? So let's discuss that for a little bit. With Azure, we have the Azure Arc that is serving as that single control plane of management. But I want to check with you, how much really can we do in terms of managing the other cloud now with Azure Arc, right? And how do you picture Azure Arc in, say, a few years from now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, as you know, Azure, when with Azure Arc, what you can do is you can Microsoft actually expanded the support for Azure Resource Manager, the ARM, to other cloud providers. So the concept was it started with the services running in Azure, and then Microsoft said, what we should do is let's start monitoring other public clouds, and they're also doing it with cost management. So for example, Azure Cost Management, you can actually monitor your AWS consumption in Azure Cost Management. So we're seeing this trend with Azure. Azure is going to basically start natively supporting other public clouds. But with Azure Arc, what happens is with ARM resources, uh, you can run outside of Azure. And what you can do is not only run in your own data center. So, for example, if you're running VMware environment, you can monitor that environment through Azure Arc, but also public cloud. So AWS, Google Cloud, Oracle, and even IBM Cloud, that can be done. And depending on the workload as well. So Kubernetes services like Amazon AKS or Google Kubernetes engine or IBM Kubernetes services can be registered with Azure Arc. And then also with Azure Arc, you can become the hybrid cloud model. So even going one step further, you can manage your Azure Stack Hub, Azure Stack HCI, and Azure Stack Edge. So it's really becoming one a single pane of glass from that aspect.
Another question that I want to ask you is about Kubernetes, right? Kubernetes and containers. I mean, it's still all over the place now, right? But I want to ask now that we have PaaS and a lot of serverless services around now. In 2 to 3 years from now, where do you see Kubernetes? Do you think Kubernetes still will be relevant?
Yeah, that's a great question. So think about it from the aspect, right? When we see the evolution of the cloud, people were really jumping on to the cloud as an infrastructure as a service. So one of the things they were doing was lift and shift. And that was, I'm talking about 5 years, 6 years ago, right? We're still seeing that trend. A lot of companies, when they move to the cloud, the first step is going into IaaS, and then they move into the PaaS, platform as a service, because the challenge is not all the applications are compatible. They have to modernize their application. When it comes to Kubernetes, it's still not widely adopted. A lot of people are moving, that is the trend, but it's not widely adopted. It's become really a buzzword now. Everybody wants to adopt it, but it's a really slow adoption. The other challenge I'm seeing is the skill set. It does require quite a bit of skill set, and there's a huge demand, and there's a lack of skill set for that right now. Because what I'm seeing is a lot of people who are coming from on-prem environment, they're bringing the same skill set to the cloud. For the cloud, you need to reskill to manage the cloud, because cloud is such a vast service-oriented environment that you have to master a lot of things. Because if you were on-prem, you would be just managing storage, for example, or you would be just manage networking. When it comes to the cloud, you have to know storage, compute, networking, all the different facets. So that also, I think, becomes challenging. What I see in this year or next year picking up traction is function as a service. So function as a service, which is used really for creating microservices based on applications, and those are targeted towards event-based architecture. So the thing is, it's much more cost-effective, and I think that's going to be much better, because the challenge with Kubernetes still is you have to go set up Kubernetes, you have to set up networking, and then you have to maintain it. So other like I know AWS is starting to already provide Kubernetes as a service or managed services for Kubernetes, where they're managing the environment on the lower level. So I think this is going to get more fine-tuned and refined as we go forward. But yeah, Kubernetes, I think, is still going to be there in a couple of years.
Microsoft earning reports, right, for the fourth quarter of last year shows that the Azure Cloud was still the biggest growing sector of all the Microsoft business portfolio, just like it was in the third quarter of 2021. So, do you see this changing at all this year in 2022?
I don't think so. It's going to change. If you look at the evolution of Satya Nadella since he became the CEO, his focus has been the cloud, and now they're lumping more and more things into the cloud. So if you think about it, Windows Server is part of the cloud now. And then looking at the earning reports of FY22, uh, which is Q1, which is like October, that report came out. Server products and cloud service revenue increased 35%. And that was mainly driven by Azure. And then the overall cloud revenue growth was 50%, which probably is going to be including other services, Office 365, Dynamics, what have you. So cloud is definitely growing, and it has to keep growing. Keep in mind, though, Microsoft is still behind the curve. So AWS still has a almost 13-14% market share lead. So Microsoft really has to get caught up. But the growth is phenomenal. I don't see Microsoft slowing down, and I think that's their main focus right now, and that should be main focus going forward.
Let's wrap up now with the future of cloud computing in general, right? So, how do you see the future of cloud computing in general playing out? And is there any advice that you have for companies or professionals out there on how they can prepare for that future that is ahead of us?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question because cloud is ever evolving. When people started moving the cloud, they were very hesitant. They're like, okay, how's security going to work? How's my data going to be protected? There was a lot of questions, and I'm still seeing a lot of people who are really new to the cloud uh, coming on, and you're like, wow, the biggest challenge with the cloud is has become such a buzzword that people uh, forget that why are they even coming to the cloud, and it can overwhelm them because cloud is so big, you can do so many things that you can get overwhelmed easily. So the first thing is know the reason for moving to the cloud. Just don't move because everybody's moving. Know what services to move to which cloud, what workloads to move, and what is going to make the best business sense for you from a business. Um, the other thing is governance, and I see a lack of governance when people are moving to the cloud. Governance is as important as being on-prem, if not greater, because the biggest challenge with governance is if you do not have the proper guardrails, your security is going to be a mess. You won't have the proper cost optimization, because if you don't have governance, people can just go and start spinning up different workloads, which is going to be a challenge. Security is not going to be there because you need to make sure security is there. So governance plays a huge role. And keep in mind, as I mentioned, cloud is ever evolving. So so it's going to be an iterative process. It's not like once you're done and it's done. It's going to keep evolving. You'll have to coming back maybe every couple of years, or could be even months, back to the drawing board and saying, okay, how things are looking, what do we need to do, and from that aspect. From a professional aspect, I think the biggest challenge we have now is keeping up to date. There's information overload on a day-to-day basis. My biggest challenge is just keeping up to date. So I would say, try to keep up with technology. Pick an area that you really like and specialize, because now it's becoming a specialization area. Even under Azure, you would be specializing in different areas. You cannot know Azure. It's such a big environment. Azure has more than 300 services. So obviously you cannot know all the services. So that's my advice.
Any last word before we say goodbye now?
No, but just want to thank you for having me on the show. I really enjoyed it, and hopefully this was useful for your audience. And hopefully, we can do this in the future as well.
All right. So you heard it from Abdul Kazi on today's episode of the Tech Talk. Thank you so much for your time, Abdul. And thank you guys for tuning in. So the question that I have for you today is, what is your cloud trend of 2021, and what are you looking forward to seeing in 2022? So please drop your answers within the comment section. So if you like this video, please hit the like button and please subscribe to my channel. So thank you again for watching. And from myself and Abdul Kazi, it's a bye-bye, and we'll see you again next time.